This is going to be my spiritual journey, but I'm probably going to be unspiritual at points because it's part of what makes me who I am. I've been with this meeting 12 years, and my first attended in August, but didn't come back till December. And that's a part of my story too, what that gap was about. But so from December of 1997 till now, I consistently attended this meeting, and this is the longest spiritual community I've been a part of. But probably the biggest influence was my Pentecostal upbringing. My father was a preacher, and Tom mentioned snake handling. We were not snake handling Pentecostals. We weren't even foot washing Pentecostals.
That's Baptist.
Well, there are foot washing Pentecostals, and but we were Assemblies of God. You know, if you've ever seen Jimmy Swaggart on TV, that's the kind of stuff I grew up listening to, his kind of music and his kind of preaching. Not quite as, my dad was not into some of the political themes that he tended to be into, although my dad didn't have a lot of tolerance for liberals and some of that stuff either. As a kid, I was born in '63, and I point that out because even though most of the people who were born in '63 don't share my view of the world, things that were going on when I was a kid really sort of pushed me away from what you might expect from a Pentecostal preacher's kid. The first thing that kind of did that for me was when I was probably 7 or 8 years old. That would have been early 70s. Let's see, 63 plus 8, yeah, 70, 71. My dad, we were in a little town of about 3,000 people in Western Illinois. If you know where Macomb and Western Illinois University is, we were in Bushnell. It's about 16 miles away from there. And he was pastoring an Assembly of God, little church there. And this was the height of the counterculture movement. The anti-war movement was heating up pretty much, because 68, 69, 70. And he invited Jesus people to come to his church and to actually do a public concert in a local park, playing the Christian rock music that was just getting started in those days. And they came to town, and I was just immediately fascinated by them. Long hair, blue jeans, but they were loving Jesus, and flowers in their hair. And I went to the little concert, and I just said, this is heaven, this is cool. So I was immediately sort of changed, because your run-of-the-mill Pentecostal wasn't into all that stuff. So right away, the counterculture at a personal level met me and said, you can be a Christian and be counterculture. On another different kind of note, but that is important in how I became a Quaker, is that when I was 5 years old, and I remember this pretty clearly because, well, let me see, the age is wrong there. It was the 72 election. Because I remember Richard Nixon, I remember McGovern, I remember, and I think that was also the year that Shirley Chisholm ran, and I remember that very clearly as I thought a black woman. And I remember, I know this is weird, why was I so interested in politics at that age? But it was in the air, it was really in the air. And I thought a black woman running for president was a great thing. I don't know why I thought that. I wasn't raised I was raised in a family that was somewhat racially prejudiced. My grandfather, my non-Pentecostal preacher grandfather, who was actually not a liberal Methodist but an apostate Baptist, was very racist. The reason that sort of comes up is because the Democratic National Convention was being broadcast when I was at his house outside of Lubbock, Texas, which is great little 5-acre farm he had there, and I loved that area. But watching the Democratic convention, I'm going, yay, Shirley Chisholm, and he's like over there. Anyway, during that point, there were also, of course, scenes from the Vietnam War on the news every night. And I told my dad that when I grew up, I wanted to become president and stop all the wars. And that was probably my first pacifist moment that at least I can come up with. And he proceeded to put me through a series of what ifs. Well, what if he took all the guns away from the United States? But what happens to Russia? They'll use all their guns. Well, then you got to get rid of Russia's guns. Well, how are you going to do that? Well, we'll go over and take them. Well, what if they fight you to take them? Put me through those sort of things to try to show me that world peace could never happen. And I was, 9 years old probably at that point. Well, that stayed with me, though, because when I was 9 years old, we moved to Chicago. From a little town of 3,000 in rural Illinois, moving to the big city. And I became the target of bullies that year. I was 9 years old. And a part of this counterculture Christianity was this Jesus saying, turn the other cheek, love your enemy. So I was letting the bullies beat me up because that's what Jesus wanted. And my dad tried to, again, turn me away from that. Jesus, it said turn the other cheek, but then if they hit you again after you turn your cheek, you can hit back. I don't make that up. He literally said that. And I didn't believe him. And so I had this pacifist streak that was already developing, in addition to the countercultural streak. At some point in my teen years, I got influenced by the Jesus people. And you may know, again, this is a different group of Jesus people. The ones that had come to the little town of Bushnell were from California. But there is a Jesus people community like about half a mile from here. And they were passing out these newspapers that were like psychedelic colors at the Erie Crown Center when Morris Cirillo, which is a Pentecostal evangelist, was holding this citywide meeting. And I was there, and they were passing out these papers, and I thought, this is so cool. This is what I remember from a kid, This is countercultural Jesus freak stuff. And so from them, I learned that they were living in a commune on the north side here. And that they had a rock band called Resurrection Band. And that was the coolest thing ever. This was the rock music that in the little park in Bushnell was folk rocky music, It's so good to be in the arms of the Lord, that kind of stuff. But Res Band was a whole other level of, no. We see wave after wave of people in the street playing their songs and missing the beat. Anyway, it was hardcore, and I was a teenager. Now that they may not know this. There was always this debate about whether rock music was Christian enough, and that it would draw you into sin. And I can say that Res Band probably set me up to love Led Zeppelin and Rush. So, okay, they have a point.